EU5 has more countries than you realize. Go ahead, count every single nation on this map. I'll wait, or you can pause the video. Whatever, I'm not your dad. Okay, are you done? You think you have the right number? Alright, you're wrong! Even if you meticulously counted every single little pixel-sized Germanic city-state, every random county in southwest China, you would never come to the correct number. And that's because there are nations that aren't visible on the default map for EU5. The largest group are pop-based nations. They're loosely organized and share a common cultural background, but they're also not playable. At least not yet. Come back to this video in 2030 and tell me how much the DLC costs. However, there's another group of nations that we can play as, and Paradox hasn't charged us extra quite just yet. These are the building-based nations. They get their name from the fact that their influence in gameplay isn't shown via control of locations on the map, but rather through the construction and possession of specific buildings. Now you might be tempted to ask, Professor Jam, how much content could there possibly be for nations that aren't even on the map? Who would want to play these anyway? Wouldn't you rather play as the Byzantines and be the 10 billionth person to restore the Roman Empire? And to answer those questions in order, I say, not a lot, me, and never. I will be your humble canary in the coal mine that is Europa Universalis 5, and let you know if these nations are worth playing and what to expect. I've broken this experience up into 3 sections. I played as a bank, as a Japanese clan, and as the Hanseatic League. There are several banks and Japanese clans, but only one Hansa, so it's special. First up, the bank gameplay. It was a bank. Specifically, I was playing as the Bank of Bardi. Starting off in Italy, your diplomatic range means you're able to do business across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Your main gameplay loop will involve increasing opinion of a nation, and then building banks in select urban locations. Your banks have upkeep, so you aren't free to just spam them all over the place, and they bring in 5% of the tax base of a given location. So if you selectively build your banks, you can rake in the big bucks, while just spamming them everywhere is a good way to waste time and money. And speaking of time and money, that's pretty much all you have. Because you're a bank. Like, technically, you could find yourself in possession of a vassal via personal union. And I actually got one of those for a span of about 6 months before the tiny 1-province minor was consumed. To the best of my knowledge, getting a personal union and then having them become a subject is the only way for you to directly impact the world, as otherwise you can't hire mercenaries anywhere. Now, I'm not saying I was stockpiling mountains of gold in order to hire a massive army of mercenaries to invade France, and then was devastated by this news, but I figured I'd save you all the heartbreak. You know, in case you were planning on doing something similar. You can also give out loans, which of course I did during my playthrough, but technically, literally any other country can do this. It's not special to banks, so I can't really count this as a win for playing as a bank. What I will say is that this process is miserable. If you click offer loan, there's a chance you're going to struggle to find anyone interested in a loan. If you fiddled with any of the filters, you're cooked. It's over for you. What you need to do is first go to the take on debt action, then filter by amount of debt, then go back to the offer loan screen, and the nations will still be sorted. Basically in order of like vague economic hardship, I guess. Meanwhile, the other filters are actually useless and scramble everything, and there's no way to tell from this screen that nations are actually in need of a loan or not. But wait, there's more! As you continue to stack paper, it gets harder to adjust the money slider when deciding how much money to loan out, since it adjusts to fit how much money you have, not how much money the target nation has, or their income, or what have you. Sorry, but since I have 30,000 ducats in the bank, I can either offer you a minuscule amount of money by moving my mouse 1 pixel, or I can offer more money than you would ever have in the entire game. Oh, and you might think these arrow buttons can do something. Sorry, that's a cruel joke that John Paradox cooked up. Each press moves the slider by 0.01 ducats. That's right, if you hold this button down for approximately 8 seconds, I timed it, you will bump this up by about 1 ducat. If only there was some sort of device connected to a computer that allowed us to manually enter numbers as input. Unfortunately, the technology just isn't there. You know what won't force you to slowly increment numbers for no particular reason as we all inch closer to the heat death of the universe? Subscribing to this channel. That's right, one button click and it's done. Now you have so much time for other things, like navigating nightmarish UI elements. Whee! Anyway, playing as a bank is okay. If your brain likes number go up, well, number go up. There are good ways to make number go up, like building banks in high tax-based locations, or offering high-interest loans to countries that are at war. But after that, it turns into how much money can I throw at random nations I want to succeed? Which doesn't sound too bad as like a gimmick run, but if you're looking for direct ways to impact the world, you don't have a whole lot. But again, you're a bank, so what were you expecting? Alright, let's take a look at the Japanese clans now. The Ashikaga Shogunate is its own playable country, but within it are the various clans who have their own holdings spread throughout Japan. Some clans even have unique country bonuses, but they all have access to the following buildings. The Yukata is a building that offers a flat 0.3 ducats. This is meant to represent where the best of your clan resides. The family shrine is self-explanatory. It provides 0.05 ducats and 1 manpower. I do not know what would possess anyone to build this. Clan shipyards provide 0.5 maritime presence, shipbuilding capacity, and 10 sailors to the owner. And these can be stacked. That's right, it's 1337, and you can get tons of sailors with this one trick. However, I must note that this building does not actually let your ships dock anywhere. You either need to cozy up to the shogunate and buy fleet basing rights to do that, or subjugate some country outside of Japan to have a place to park your boats. The Tatara is a building that takes in iron and produces tools and weaponry. Most of the time you're making very little profit from these, but it's good to have a means of producing weapons. The Yamashiro provides the ability to recruit regiments and locations, gives 1 manpower, and provides 0.1 ducats to the owner. Only 1 can be constructed per location. These can be built in places where another clan hasn't set up shop yet, in the lands of clans that you're allied with, or if you've been proclaimed Shugo Daimyo, the provinces that the shogun has given you authority over. So if you'd like to extend your clan to new lands, you can do it via allying other clans. Just be aware that they might do it to you as well. Finally, we have the Shoen, which has a whole slew of production methods in order to produce raw materials, 0.5 trade capacity and trade advantage, 10 manpower, and a flat 0.5 ducats. This can be constructed multiple times in the same location and has the same construction restrictions as the Yamashiro. When I say the Shoen is broken, I truly mean it. Once you begin spamming it and you have enough locations, you will never truly need any other building, really. And what are we using this money and manpower for? Japanese clans have access to some special military units, clan retainers and clan retainer cavalry. Instead of the usual bonuses that footmen and cavalry would have, they get a +2 initiative bonus and cost half as much as their counterparts. That's right, not only do you have a building that makes income and manpower easy to ramp up, you don't actually need that much money to build up your army. However, I must warn you, warfare as a Japanese clan can be both mind-numbingly easy and an infuriating affair. First off, the initial stages of the game will only let you get a good CB against those who support the opposite side of the Nanbokucho Jidai situation. Once that situation's resolved, you can kinda just manufacture a CB against anyone, but regardless, here's how the wars go. You can get a ticking war score by having an army while your opponent does not. This, however, is hellish since you have fog of war everywhere that your troops aren't, and Japanese clan holdings can be spread throughout the islands. You cannot occupy locations because remember, the shogunate owns everything. So instead, you have to raid clan holdings, which is an instantaneous action that impacts the prosperity of the location and gives you a 20% war score bonus against your opponent, capped at 50% war score that can be gained this way. This means you can definitely blitz enemy clans by quickly wiping out their armies and raiding their holdings, gaining yourself 50 plus war score in the span of a month. However, this also means that if you haven't kept track of where each holding is, they might have a tiny army wandering around in the fog of war, raising your holdings and instantly balancing out the war score. At this point, you're stuck babysitting their holdings as the war score ticker goes up. Speaking from experience, this sucks. It's terrible. At best, the wars are instantly over and you don't really feel like you've accomplished anything. And at worst, you have that same lack of accomplishment just stretched out over a longer period of time. So here's the basic gameplay loop I ran into. Spam show-in buildings to have unlimited income and manpower, build massive armies, and then just kind of bulldoze through your enemies until you get bored. If you gobble up enough land, the shogun might name you Shugo Daimyo, granting you the ability to ignore building restrictions in your province, and you get some other nice bonuses too, but really spamming more buildings is the prize here. But I would be remiss if I did not mention that the Shugo Daimyo position is tied into the Japanese Shogunate International Organization. You can also just demand the status of Shugo Daimyo if you have 50 prestige. As a Japanese clan, you're also part of the Shinto International Organization. It has a lot of cool interactions, but it's somewhat convoluted, and I'm going to sound like I'm explaining the rules to a board game for a second, so bear with me. So you have purity, which can go up by handing over prestige, handing over gold, destroying your own works of art, or committing Sudoku. Then, once you're over a certain threshold of purity, you start generating monthly honor. This honor can then be spent on various bonuses.
I'll be dividing my love into 7 equal sections or love quadrants. Each quadrant will be worth 15 love units represented by these small brass marbles. You may use these marbles as currency.
Full transparency though, you don't really need these bonuses at this stage of the game. You have literal infinite money and manpower generators, and you can just gobble up your neighbors who don't realize that they too could be constructing infinite income and manpower generators. Now, I assume that these two international organizations become much more impactful once the Sengoku Jidai begins, and the clans go from being building-based countries to regular location-based ones, but I'm sticking to the building-based experience, and damn it, they just do not matter at this stage of the game. So warfare is shallow and unfulfilling, developing your territories is a no-brainer, and you can snowball with minimal effort. I actually ended up having more money playing as a clan than I did playing as a bank. In terms of income, I was eclipsing empires in India. It just feels like it was half-baked, like something meant to tide you over before the real fun can begin once the shogunate falls. Who thought this war system was a good idea? Why are these buildings just printing money? I enjoy EU5's economic system, or at least what it's attempting to achieve by modeling supply and demand and the various markets and how countries gain wealth from them. In Japan, I guess their manners just, they print money and then at night they clone people. I genuinely don't know what's going on here. It's a shame Paradox expects you to sit through this era before you get to the Sengoku Jidai situation, because they clearly put some effort into giving these clans some cool advances, and they've set up 2 international organizations to model the unique situation in Japan. You just have to get through the most bland, generic Japanese strategy game experience since Sengoku in order to get there. That's right, baby, I was probably the first person on YouTube in 2026 to mention Sengoku. Finally, we have the Hanseatic League, a trade network, merchant, guild type thingy that EU5 attempts to simulate with the building-based nation model. I'm not going to get into the weeds of whether they accomplish their goal or how they're supposed to do that. That's a topic for another day. But here are the unique buildings at their disposal. We have the Hanseatic Town Hall that can be built in your capital Lübeck and provides monthly Republican tradition, cabinet efficiency, and parliament-based support. You have the Shipwright Guild, which gives you shipbuilding and harbor capacity, the ability to build ships, duh, and 10 monthly sailors. Finally, and the one you'll spam the most, is the Hanseatic Contour. This provides 0.1 maritime presence, 1 trade advantage, and 0.25 trade capacity. These buildings require you to have over 100 opinion with the country you're building them in. Unlike the bank, I don't think there's a downside to spamming contours, provided there are enough burghers in the location to staff them. They do, however, cost more each time you want to increase their level in a certain location. So for the cost of moving a contour up from level 1 to level 2, you could just build a couple level 1 contours for the same price and get twice the rewards. It's kind of weird. I think this would make sense if the Hansa were restricted to building contours in proper cities, forcing you to really concentrate your resources in a few key places and be really strategic with it. But currently, any town within your diplomatic range can have a contour. I built them all over France. I even reached down into Italy. Bohemia rapidly urbanized, and so I was basically able to just spam everywhere and then take over their market. The Hansa also start the game with subjects, and not just any subjects, but a special type called Members of the Hansa. I know, very, very creative. Each one provides 2.5% trade capacity to the Overlord, as well as some institution spread, 5% of their income, and allegedly sailors and manpower. During my playthrough, I reached a cap of 6 manpower, so take that with a grain of salt. Meanwhile, the subjects get minus 10% trade maintenance, an absurdly high loyalty bonus, which I guess is more of a buff for the Overlord, and they get 2.5% increased trade efficiency. You can ask any nation to be your subject and join the league so long as they meet the following criteria. They have to have 100 or more opinion of you, have 5 or fewer locations, and one of their locations must be urban. There is no limitation on, actual geographic location, and I actually got, an Italian city-state to join the Hanseatic League. It doesn't make much sense. Now, this sounds exciting on paper. You're a trade league, you're making money hand over fist, and you actually have subjects, so you can hire mercenaries to fight your wars. Remember, this was that thing that I was so excited about maybe being able to do as a bank, and then getting very sad about. In practice, it's a weird mixture of boredom that you'd get with the bank gameplay, with occasional wars for survival in a system that absolutely wants to see you crushed. While having subjects lets you hire mercenaries, they also make you far more likely to get dragged into a war. I fought an early war against Denmark, for example, leveraging what wealth I had to make a tiny mercenary army comprised mostly of cavalry. I threw all the horsemen on one flank, exploited EU5's janky military mechanics, and I just barely scraped by while running on fumes. My second war didn't go quite as well. I was barely able to muster a slightly larger army of mercenaries, while the Danish army had become much larger, and I got wiped out pretty badly. When you're at the mercy of AI subjects and EU5's mercenary system, you're better off just moving on with your life. Now, if the Hansa got more manpower from its members, or had some serious cost reduction for mercenaries, then we might be in better shape. But as it stands right now, mercenaries are too expensive to be viable against constant wars with AI, and the AI is too clueless to do heavy lifting in a war as an ally or as a subject. Somehow, I think I have to rate the Hansa as the worst of these 3 experiences. Maybe I just need to get good, and some epic gamers are going to tell me in the comments how they smothered Denmark in its debt-filled crib in 1337, and then proceeded to dog walk the rest of Northern Europe. But I consider myself a gamer of at least middling skill in this genre, and it just felt unfun. In battle for first and second place, I think the Japanese clans get first due to the depth that they have, as well as the promise of something more to do later down the line. Banks can be entertaining, but you really do need to resign yourself to the fact that your only enjoyment will come from randomly gifting tons of money to nations you want to see succeed. And at that point, why don't you just play as those nations in the first place? Could be a cool gimmick for a multiplayer game, though. Alright, there you have it. Let me know your feelings on building-based nations and if there's anything I missed. And yes, I'll even give you permission to rant about how the Hansa could have been an international organization or something. Okay, bye.